Yeah, since it's morning and it's really cold in Melbourne, if you don't want to have your camera on because you're still in bed, I get it.
Awesome, guys. Well, I will hand over to Andreea now to get you guys started. Just letting everyone know that we are recording this session. So if you do not wish to be on camera, please make sure you hide that one. But most of the time while it's speaking, the person who will be shown will be Freya and Andreea. So wishing you guys all the best for your session today, and I can't wait to watch it back later.
Thanks, Ash.
Thanks, Ash. Have fun.
So I'm going to take away, Andreea. I'm just going to get off this screen for a second so that I can record. I hope that's all right with everybody.
Okay, sure.
Well, definitely, I don't want to spend too much time on the slides. It's Saturday, it's freezing, and I'd prefer just to have a bit of fun. I do a lot of presentations like this and they can get pretty science heavy. But today I don't really want to do that. I mean, I'll certainly be sharing some science and things like that, but I'd love to have like a discussion at the end if anybody has questions on their ideas around building a breakfast and questions for me so that you can go away with lots of tangible tips. But let me just escape for a sec so I can screen record. Request host to record to the cloud. Cool. It's not letting me. That's fine. I'll get you guys to send the recording. No stress.
Yeah. Easy done. All
right. So tech is so far working well this morning.
Oh, for you, maybe.
Okay, welcome everybody. There's certainly some familiar names in the call, so nice to see you. And some names I haven't seen before, nice to meet you. I'm Freya, naturopath and nutritionist. I've been practicing for about 6 years, going on 7 soon. And my absolute passion is working with endometriosis, pelvic pain, reproductive health and fertility. I practice my business online most of the time, but then I'm also in person at a clinic called Elgin House, which is in Carlton in Melbourne. And I work with some incredible gynecologists and specialists there. So it's been a real joy as a naturopath to be able to finally kind of soften the line and come together with the doctors. And certainly it's been particularly great having doctors on board with a holistic approach and who are willing to work alongside naturopathy, because I'm sure many of you know, if you have endometriosis, that it is a whole body condition that really requires that holistic multimodal care. So yeah, I feel really lucky to be able to work with them, and outside of that, run my own business. This is my little home office. Sometimes I go a little bit crazy, but I live on a park. So that's good. I get time in nature and I'm not just pent up inside. Mind you, it's freezing in Melbourne at the moment, so it's a lot of inside time. Love to hear where everybody's coming from. I know certainly some of you are from Melbourne, but is there anybody who's not from Melbourne? You can just type in the chat, or, you know, I can just imagine where you're coming from. How do we see the chat on this? Can you see it, Andreea? Oh, there we go, chat. Awesome. North Queensland. Oh. That is where I would rather be. All right, guys, let's get into it. I think we'll save questions for the end. And I think that community, especially living with endometriosis, and certainly QENDO, the amazing organisation, really pioneered with their QENDO meetups the importance of community when we have conditions like this, and conversation. So I'll open up the mic at the end. Perhaps we can even just stop recording then and we can just have a chat. If it's not related to food and breakfast, that's totally fine. You can just pick my brain. All right, let's get into it. So many of you are here. Hopefully the name of today's talk was appealing to you, but really what we're hoping to be able to achieve is to ultimately, with I'm assuming probably most of you might have a diagnosed endometriosis. Some of you maybe not, and you're just looking to improve your quality of life. That's also great. But we know that endometriosis is a chronic inflammatory condition. So with the strategies today, we will be able to reduce inflammation. And look, that information is really important for anybody. We want to reduce inflammation as much as we can. We want to stay full for hours, and I'll speak about that soon, and some strategies to help you figure out if you've actually eaten enough at breakfast, because a big sign there is that you can actually get through to lunch. I'm not anti-snacking. Eat if you're hungry, but it's a really interesting one, because if you do get enough food and enough of the right foods at brekkie, you should really be able to hum through to lunchtime. We want to be able to reduce your cravings. Nothing wrong with cravings, but as you'll soon learn, blood sugar, when it spikes and then drops, can cause really significant cravings, which can catch us in a little bit of a vicious loop from a nutrition perspective, because often when we get that strong, sharp craving, we want the quick thing that's going to satisfy us fast. So it might be grabbing another coffee, grabbing a chocolate bar, grabbing a croissant, something quick to get rid of that feeling, which fine every now and then, but when it's happening all the time, can be a little bit detrimental to our health. And of course, how wonderful will it be to feel calm and balanced? Look, that's layered, that's multifaceted. There's lots of things behind feeling calm and balanced. But if we just keep it really simple, optimizing the foundations through enjoying a beautiful, balanced breakfast will really, really help us to feel this way. So I always like to start off with some stats. So I was looking at Australian census data this morning about what we are eating as Aussies for brekkie. And surprise, surprise, 50% of us are on some type of cereal. A cornflake and a Weet Bix is still really, really popular. Some are having fruit, 29%. About 14% of us is toast with spreads, 13% yogurt. Sorry, I've missed the H there. And then your hot breakfasts, which are like your eggs and delicious things, which we'll speak a lot about today, are often reserved for the weekends or going out for your little brunch with friends on the weekend. My aim is to completely flip this, by the way. Hopefully, let's see how I go. Okay, so as you could see, let's just go back for a second. If we look at the top 3 foods that Australians are eating for breakfast, these are all containing sugars and starches. Don't get me wrong, the fruit's got a little bit of fibre in it. The toast may contain a little bit of fibre in it if you've got some soybeans or some seeds and things in it. But the majority of cereals are quite highly refined, and they contain mostly sugar and mostly starch. Starch is a type of carbohydrate. So you can see here that most Australians are having a high sugar and a high starch breakfast most of the time. And let's just say you do have a cooked brekkie on your weekend, that's still 80% of your week. So it's quite significant. And certainly the current health data does reflect this with regard to the levels of metabolic conditions and disease in Australia. So things like type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, and metabolic dysfunction. So the things, that very often I have these conversations in a clinic where a lot of us assume, and also I want to preface here, if you're having any of these breakfasts, I'm not demonizing the breakfast or pointing the finger at anybody here. As you can see, based on the stats in Australia, culturally, we go towards fruit juice and cereals for breakfast in the Western world. It's very, very common. This is nobody's fault. So you'll see here on the left a fruit smoothie. Of course, we assume that this is really good for us, and certainly it's got some fiber and whatnot in it. But when we're just having it like our fruits blended up, maybe with a little bit of a milk or a water, that is a pure sugar breakfast. And I think what's important to illustrate is breakfast means it comes from breaking the fast. So you're fasted, so your tummy should really be nearly completely empty. There's nothing in your tummy. So when you've got nothing in your tummy, I speak about this as though there's no padding to slow down the absorption of these sugars and starches. So what it means is when you are going for these really common, typical Aussie breakfasts, is they'll come into they'll get broken down to glucose, and we'll go through this in more detail. Your carbohydrate or your starch, broken down to glucose. There's no fat, there's no fiber, there's no protein, there's nothing in the tummy to slow that absorption of the glucose and the sugars into the bloodstream. So you'll get a big spike. And I've got some really cool pictures I'll show you soon. But classic Aussies and OJ for breakfast, toast and Vegemite. A really tricky one is your mueslis and your granolas, which are full of dried fruit. Once again, I'm not demonizing these foods. It's more so just if we want to enjoy these delicious foods, I'm hoping after today's call, maybe we can start to move those foods away from breakfast, because at breakfast, our blood sugar is the most vulnerable. So our first meal of the day is what sets our blood sugar up for the rest of the day. So if we have a high sugar or a high starch breakfast, even if we make some good decisions and pick some great things for our lunch or dinner, our blood sugar response to those foods is going to be 30% less optimal than it could be. And if we have a great brekkie, like a protein forward brekkie, which we'll talk about, and then say we have pizza, pasta for lunch, or grab a burger or whatever, we're on the go, our blood sugar response to that high starch or carb food will be 30% better, all because we had the foresight at brekkie just to set that blood sugar up for success. So it 100% dictates how we feel for the remainder of the day. I will intermittently have a little look at the chat as we're going through, but for anybody who joined late, we're going to open up the mic and we can stop the recording at the end and have a chat. Cool. So I just want to break down a little bit of science for you. This isn't going to be too science techy, but essentially when we're having these starches and sugars for breakfast, we'll start here on the left-hand side at sweet taste, is we get this rush of dopamine, which is really fascinating. I'm sure you all know about dopamine. We produce dopamine when we have sex. We produce dopamine when we go shopping. We produce lots of dopamine when we are flicking on our phone, on Instagram. It makes us feel good. We get a rush. That sugary, starchy, classic Aussie breakfast is doing exactly the same thing. And the tricky part about it is it's really easy, and it's not actually super easy to distinguish between a dopamine rush and energy levels. So quite often we'll be having that classic Aussie breakfast and thinking that we're getting some energy out of it. Not really the case, unfortunately. What's happening here? You might have learned about mitochondria. I learned about mitochondria when I did my degree in like year 11, 12, human science and stuff. So mitochondria is the energy powerhouse of the cell. Mitochondria gets really quite upset when we get a lot of these blood sugar fluctuations and where our blood sugar is spiking quite a lot. And this will make a bit more sense when I show you a graph in a moment. But if we're having these regular blood sugar spikes, so let's just say most of the time we are having a more kind of Aussie standard breakfast like we spoke about before, our mitochondrial function actually starts to decline. We have got a mitochondria in every single cell of the body. I work with a lot of fertility. I'm always talking about mitochondrial health because we have a lot of mitochondria in our eggs, and especially with endometriosis. I mean, 70% of individuals with endometriosis can conceive, and then the remaining 30%, then they could have a little bit of trouble. A lot of my beautiful patients I'm supporting through IVF were always coming back to mitochondrial function and boosting it to support that egg quality. So what you can start to see is I know this might seem a little bit far-fetched, but if you're having these high starch, high sugar brekkies, and you've been having them your whole life and grew up on Weet Bix, grew up on porridge, like grew up on toast and jam, Vegemite flying out the door, you know, I'm not perfect here either. I've just been brought up, you know, probably in the same way most of us have. Our mitochondria have been getting a bit stressed out for a while. And because they're in every single cell of the body, this doesn't only just transfer to our energy levels, which is the primary job of the mitochondria, is to produce energy in every single cell of the body and optimize that cellular function. But absolutely over time, it can then have flow-on effects to things like fertility. Fascinating to think that perhaps just by adjusting our breakfast food and improving our energy can have a flow-on effect to our fertility, but it absolutely can. So as I just said, on the right-hand side, say you've been growing up on those brekkies and they're still your go-to, the reality is those mitochondria will be struggling a little bit. But I think we all know, if most of you have got endometriosis here, well, for me in particular, being a clinician working primarily with endometriosis, the top 3 symptoms that are presented to me are pain, bloating, and fatigue. Top 3, for sure, without a doubt, with endometriosis. And I feel like sometimes this comes as a little bit of an unpopular opinion or commentary, but I have a lot of individuals that I work with who feel that the nature of the endometriosis, that is a chronic condition that we live with forever, is the cause of the fatigue and that we can never overcome that. That's simply not true. Certainly sometimes a good excision surgery or whatnot to get the tissue out and calm the inflammation down in some cases can be really, really helpful. But there are so many other things that we can be doing in our lifestyle to really support that fatigue. And I've seen it from, stage 4 cases of endometriosis, multiple surgeries down to like lower levels of endometriosis. It's entirely possible to feel better alongside the condition. And sometimes the tweaks we need to make are just actually really simple, and we'll be going to the doctor and, they'll be prescribing more medications and things like that. And I feel like the missing piece of the puzzle is we do often need to go back to those foundations, and breakfast is one of them. And I need to get off my soapbox and keep going, but I'm really passionate about this. I just want you to all know that the body has the most enormous capacity to heal, and everybody here can feel better and can lift that fatigue, regardless of the story, the other conditions you have, the meds you're taking. And in my opinion, this is probably one of the best places to start. So I'm just going to move this chat bar because I can't see what's happening on the right-hand side. So essentially what's happening is the high sugar brekkie is tricking us into thinking we're getting energy, so we continue having it every day. The mitochondria are becoming deficient, and they're starting to not be able to fulfill their daily duty, which is to help you produce energy. As I said before, the breakfast will impact how you feel the rest of the day. The interesting thing here is, and I talk to a lot of my patients about this, is they say when they get home from the end of the workday at 5 p.m, they are just like done. Or at 3 p.m, they are done. They have this huge crash. It's not super common to sit there and reflect and go, hey, what did I have for breakfast? Could breakfast have actually impacted how I'm feeling now? We don't usually do that. We'll often just think I had a stressful day, maybe I didn't have a very good sleep. But if you are tendencing to a higher sugar or higher starch brekkie and you're open to making the shifts, I can almost nearly promise you that we can get on top of those dips. Don't get me wrong, getting your full bloods done, making sure you're not deficient in iron, vitamin D, B12, all of those important nutrients for fatigue are essential. But this is a really cost-effective strategy to try and see how you go. So this is another little concept of what a high sugar and a high starchy brekkie can do to your energy. And at the start, I said it is actually possible to have a balanced brekkie that can get you through all the way through to lunch. But often what we see is, an hour or two later, we're starving. I absolutely know this. I eat a lot of food, and when I don't get enough protein or a balanced breakfast, I'm starving. I'm at the fridge, I'm looking for more food, and looking to satiate myself. And I'm sure that this is probably something that you've all felt as well before. So I'm just drilling over these concepts a few times so that they hopefully really make sense for you. So you've got your carbohydrate, whatever it is, let's say it's your Wheat Bix or your muesli with dried fruit and your milk. The carbohydrate breaks down to glucose. The glucose gets absorbed into the bloodstream. The glucose then raises and you get a blood glucose spike. We know that frequent spikes can drive inflammation, they can cause cellular aging, and they can impact mitochondrial dysfunction. But importantly as well, the more blood sugar spikes you get, the more of a hormone you produce called insulin. And insulin is described as a ferry hormone. It will grab your glucose every time it rises and deliver it to the cells for energy. This is called maintaining homeostasis. The body doesn't want high blood glucose, so it has all these little checks in place to lower that blood glucose. Along comes insulin, lowers the blood glucose, but over time, and if we've been having these brekkies for years and years and years and years, we start to produce more and more and more insulin, which eventually will start to become resistant. Many of you might have heard of insulin resistance. I see it in clinic a lot more than you would probably imagine. We learnt about these conditions in university and I sort of thought, oh, I don't imagine I'll see much of this, but I see it a lot. And one of the ways we can get the insulin down is simply by just lowering that starch and sugar at brekkie and prioritizing things like protein, fat, and fiber. So here is the schematic for you all. So I'd like you to look in the middle. So the green is what we're largely aiming for with our blood sugar. I don't know if anybody's worn a continual glucose monitor. I'm a total nerd, love this stuff. It's a little monitor you kind of smack on the back of your arm there. It costs about $100 and you get instant feedback as to what is happening with your blood sugar. Frightening, but fascinating. And you can see exactly what particular foods are impacting your blood sugar spikes, and then you can get creative, change it up, mix up the pairing of your food, and then see if it does the same thing next time. But here we can see we're looking just for these gentle rises and drops in the blood sugar most of the time. But when we're getting these spikes, when we don't have enough protein, fat, or fiber with our brekkie, see this huge spike? Shoots up, you get all this insulin release, the mitochondria get a bit stressed out, it can drive a bit of inflammation, and then it drops down. And what happens when it drops down? We want a coffee or we want something to pick us back up because the crash feels like intense sugar cravings, excessive hunger, but it also feels like it makes us feel so tired. It's only 10 o'clock in the morning. We've got the whole day ahead. So there's so much room for improvement. A couple of little pictures here for you. Please don't hate me. I know there are so many porridge lovers out there, and look, there are hacks to optimize your porridge, but oats are a starch, which is a carbohydrate, and it's like 98% of the bowl. So I will give you some hacks. It's a beautiful warming food, especially in winter, but just remember it is 98% starch, as you can see here. Special K. It's still all over the shelves, so lots of people are still eating it. And yeah, look what's happening here. It's really significant. Ideally, we want to be sitting under that green, within the green. Good old muesli and fruit juice. Also, I will absolutely recognize the fact that these images are extracted from the incredible Jessie and Chaspa, who is the glucose goddess. She's preaching what us naturopaths have been preaching for a long time, but her language and the way that she is educating is so wonderful and digestible. And these charts and graphs, I'm a visual learner, I find it just so wonderful to help educate, seeing a visual of what exactly that food is doing to the blood sugar. So muesli and fruit juice is doing a similar thing. Now we start to get into the exciting stuff. Sciencey stuff's nearly over, guys. Forget the fasting part, but you're starting to see here the difference between what your higher starchy sugar breakfasts are doing compared with your higher protein, fat, and fiber brekkies. Like, it's quite incredible, right? Incredible. These graphs never cease to amaze me, ever. Okay, this is for you that do love your cereal. We'll talk a little bit about this in a moment, but like there are hacks you can do. And look, our food stories are layered and sometimes complex, and you know, we build our relationships through food from our very early days. And if you've grown up with sweeter breakfast, sometimes it can be really tricky to to shift from that. So let's just work to optimize the food that you are having to support your blood sugar and your energy levels. So I don't know if anybody's going to be having beef jerky for brekkie. Like, I love this type of stuff. I have a lot of leftovers for brekkie because they're high protein, they've got fats and fiber. So I encourage everybody to get into that. But yeah, you could have 2 eggs with your Special K, and that would really help if you weren't into the jerky. For the porridge lovers, there's so much more you can do here. Obviously, in this schematic, it's a fried egg, but you can actually, with your porridge, get an egg, whisk it up, and stir it in at the end, and it won't go scrambly or curdly, and you'll get, like, that's an extra 6 grams of protein. When you pair your protein with the carbohydrate, it lowers the blood sugar spike. As you can see here in the picture, the butter contains fat. When we dress up our carbs so they're not just carb and sugar and starch, that's when we start to get that lowering of the spike. So you can get creative and do whatever you want. If you're still set on your starch or sugar breakfast and that's the thing that brings you the most joy in life, sure, maybe just add on an egg or have some nuts or some Greek yogurt or something like that with it. So now we get into the fun stuff. I was spending time on my phone last night going through. I love food so much. It makes me so happy. I think about it all the time. I love beautiful food. I love farmers markets. I love making food look beautiful because it impacts the way that we feel when things look beautiful. I think everybody can agree. So we're drawn to flowers. They make us happy because they look beautiful and they smell beautiful. So taking a little bit of care in your breakfast and your presentation really goes a long way, and it's worth it. You deserve to have a beautiful, beautiful plate of food. But the general rule of thumb, when you're wanting to optimize your energy, reduce the crash, the cravings, and the fatigue, is try your best to make protein the centerpiece. If you can, add a fat, so cooking your eggs in a butter or a nice extra virgin olive oil, adding nuts or seeds to your yogurt. There's been some really interesting health information over the years. We've done the high fat, low fat, we've done the low fat, low sugar. At the moment, it is all about protein. I mean, for me, protein has always been a real kind of anchor point in nutrition anyway, but it's definitely having its moment now. But fat is really not to be feared. It is amazing for our blood sugar. So we've got protein as our centerpiece, and I'll go through some ideas for you in a moment. We want to ideally add a fat source. What is not on this slide is avocado is incredible. There's a fat source there as well. But like extra virgin olive oil is so anti-inflammatory, and we want more anti-inflammatory foods for endo. Add a fiber if you can, and we'll go through some options soon. And then if you want, you can add your optional starch. We don't actually need it for breakfast for energy. The protein, the fat, and the fiber is actually enough. But if you're like me, I want my eggs in a beautiful piece of toast or in a delicious tortilla or something like that. So just do what makes you feel good. The main thing is, if you're really quite fatigued or you're really struggling to feel better at the moment, and there is a significant portion of your week where you do have the higher sugar or starch breakfast, for you, avoiding the sugar, the honey, the maple syrup is going to make a really big difference, and the starch. And you can just trial it for a week and email me and say you don't feel any better. Because I can almost promise you will be feeling better. For some of my patients, when they come to me for fatigue, we'll just start with breakfast. Really gentle shifts. We'll figure out something that works for the person. And that's the only thing with these presentations, is I can't tailor the information specifically for you. But at the same time, sometimes that's all we need to build that energy so that we can then have the capacity to do the things that we want to do in life, which, you know, we should be able to. So spicing it up. So many different things here. As you can see on these plates, I am quite possibly addicted to eggs. I feel sorry for anybody here who can't eat eggs or has an allergy. If you're vegan and there was one thing you could possibly ever add in and get the best sourced egg you could from a nutrient and protein perspective, my goodness, it would be so worth it. And for anybody else, I would just encourage you to get creative with eggs. We do have a lot of other options, but truly the nutrient density and the protein they carry, they're just unbelievable. And then feeding into fertility as well, they're like, that's your fertility superfood. Eggs and sardines. Down here on the right, we've got, these are butter beans. I've got a little shopping list for you guys at the end so that this weekend you can just go and get some of the ingredients, and you know if you've got them in the fridge, you'll be sorted. When I am going through the fridge and I'm not organized, I've got nothing left, what I'll always nearly have is a tin of beans, like, because I always just stock up on them. I pretty much always got some onion or garlic, always got dried chili. I've got herbs in the garden, and even if I don't have eggs, there is an amazing brekkie, you know, and I'll show you in a moment, like some little hacks to do, but sauteing the beans with garlic, your herbs, say rosemary, parsley, chili flakes. Often another thing I've got in the fridge is, like, I like to buy bulk feta, and it's just always there because it lasts so long. So you saute that up with salt and pepper, some fresh herbs and feta on top, and oh my God, you thought you had no food in the fridge, and hey presto, this beautiful, protein-rich, full of fibre, delicious brekkie. But otherwise, obviously, there's heaps of other stuff that you can do depending on what's in the fridge. I've got some other pictures, but you can make brekkie muffins if you're a meal prepper, egg muffins. I always love to have like a bit of kimchi and things like that just to spice it up. Yeah, totally. You do get sick of eggs a little bit, which is why I wanted to give you guys a range of different options to mix up the flavours. There's nearly always something kind of green. So I didn't include the stats, but in Australia, I think the current guideline for vegetables is 5 serves per day. A serve is 1 cup raw, or the rule of thumb is 1 cup raw, half a cup cooked. So many of us are not coming close to that. And look, sometimes because I'm so set on my trying to get enough protein, I don't get enough vegetable as a result of that, or we just don't because for whatever reason. So if you can get some veg in at brekkie, you are seriously starting the day off well. So getting creative with veg. So my rule of thumb, a lot of people go, oh my gosh, how do you get vegetables in a breakfast? Is to saute them. Olive oil, I'm looking at the top right here. Olive oil with garlic, salt and pepper. Nearly always chili flakes, and then whatever I have in the fridge. So I love broccolini, I get it crispy. Silver beet, kale is delicious with chili and garlic. Zucchini, it could be mushrooms, tomato, and then always some kind of little rocket or sprouty thing just to throw on the side. You mix up the flavors with your herbs. If you have a garden, I highly recommend having some of these in your garden so that they're always there. You're not spending $3 to $5 on a bunch and not using it all the time. And then I always like to have some kind of extra little thing in the fridge, and these are all long lasting. So your beans, I do love a halloumi or a parmesan or a feta or something like that. When in season, a bowl of berries, and when they're not in season, I just have frozen in the fridge. I meant to say at the start, there are so many diets out there. Okay, there's low FODMAP, there's low histamine, there's low nickel, there's anti-inflammatory. Everything I'm speaking out today is largely anti-inflammatory. There is a time and a place for a low FODMAP or perhaps a low histamine, but they're short-term only. I just wanted to give you guys the more general anti-inflammatory leaning nutrition tips, because I do think if you're doing something like low histamine or low FODMAP, it's really good to talk with somebody about it to help guide you and to ensure that you don't get stuck on it for too long, because usually there's a root cause that probably needs to be worked on so that you can then tolerate those foods a little bit better. Okay, shopping list. So eggs, always and forever. Starches, optional. Grainy seedy bread, always if possible. If you can get soybeans in your bread, amazing. They're a really good source of protein. The more seeds, the darker it is, the more fiber it's got and the more protein it's got on it. Tortillas are awesome. I just love really simple ingredients. Corn, salt, water. That's it. Rice paper. I did these slides quite a few times and I left off the photo of this delicious breakfast just because you get sick of having like fried eggs or scrambled eggs. So you get rice paper that you make rice paper rolls with. Same thing, you just dip it in water for a minute. I then do a scrambled egg with garlic, soy sauce, a little bit of fish sauce and ginger. Put the scrambled egg on the rice paper, fold it up like a little parcel, and then pan fry it. Oh my God, it's the most delicious thing because it's crispy, like you're having this dumpling, and then like with some chili oil and chopped broccolini or something. Oh my God, so good, making me hungry. Back to your shopping list. Legumes. Try to always get butter beans. They're not everywhere. Cannellini are easier, but the butter beans are awesome. Try to have some butter beans or cannellini in the cupboard always. They will be there for you when you haven't done your shopping and you need to throw something nutritious together. Protein powder is always excellent because we're not always organised, and it can just be easy to throw into things, to throw into your oats, to throw into a smoothie when it's summer, to throw into a bliss bowl. Collagen. Another wonderful source of protein. I put collagen in my morning matcha. I put it in soup if it's got no protein in it. You can't taste it. Nuts and seeds, put them on everything that you can, especially if you're leaning more towards your oat breakfast or say your Greek yogurt breakfast, is try to always layer it with the nuts and seeds. And because I just wanted to keep this short and sharp, a lot of people do say to me, Freya, I don't have time to cook eggs in the morning. Like I'm flying out the door, I've got kids, whatever this thing is. So that's when you want to make like your pre-done little egg frittata muffins, or you just want to do pre-hard-boiled eggs and they're in a tub. All you do is put the toaster down, whack the egg on and throw some avocado. It takes like under 5 minutes. So it really is possible to get it in, but one that people love is a Greek yogurt. And then you just put your nuts and seeds on top. If you do want to have a little bit of granola or muesli on it, it really is okay. It's just when the whole bowl is the granola or muesli and there isn't much fat or protein or fiber in it that it will spike you. So Greek yogurt is like my go-to for the quick, when I just need a quick brekkie. And then often I'll put some of the lower GI fruit on it, like your apples, blueberries, blackberries, cherries, raspberries, and I just do frozen in winter. But if you're up somewhere else magnificent, well, you probably got some nice fresh ones. Other good things to have in the fridge: smoked salmon or turkey breast, bacon occasionally, feta, halloumi, yogurt, higher protein milk. So what I should have written here is if you're consuming oat milk, I think there's one brand out there at Woolworths. It's in a blue carton and it's got less sugar in it, but oats are a starch, remember? So when you're having your oat milk coffee for brekkie, just check the sugar content per serve of your oat milk because it's really high. I do bonsai. Whole milk is amazing if you consume whole milk. Even look at almond or other milks like that. Cream cheese, awesome. Cottage cheese, amazing. And then veg, fruit and herbs. So if we actually just take a step back, we've just always got eggs in the cupboard. We've always got some beans in the cupboard. We've got some nuts and seeds, they last forever. And then we've got those things that last for a while, like a good tub of feta just sitting there is great because it lasts forever when it's in the liquid, lasts ages. And then those things that have the shorter shelf life, you know, your yogurt and cottage cheese and stuff, are just nice to kind of rotate between. And then with those vegetables that I went through, like your kale, your silver beet, your zucchini, mushrooms, tomatoes, you just kind of want them on rotation most of the time so you've got something that's good, or your broccolini to throw in at brekkie. Now, there are a bazillion more things I could have added into this talk, but the main takeaway I really hope for you to kind of understand was the sugar and the starch unfortunately aren't serving you in the best way that we might have assumed. And just by making those switches will make a huge difference on your energy and fatigue. And I really encourage you to start experimenting. If you're a sweet brekkie person, to start just gently trying some savoury brekkies. It'll take a bit of time for your taste buds to adjust, but it is entirely possible for it to happen. Sugar is addictive. Like, it boosts dopamine, makes us feel good, promotes our pleasure and reward system. So if we've been having that food for a long time, it can feel a bit tough initially to come off it, just like giving up coffee or alcohol or whatever the thing is, but it's totally possible to overcome. So just baby steps.